And we are on first episode of Mission Critical. My name is Joe. I'm here with Manny. Manny, what's up, dude?
What's up, man? How are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. I'm excited about this project. Today, we're just going to kind of go over some basic stuff so that the listeners can get an idea of what this is all about. We'll do some little intros and get this thing rolling. Again, this is Mission Critical, and the whole purpose of this podcast is to give you tools and techniques that you can use in whether it's your job, your parenting, your personal life, or maybe you're coaching sports teams. We want to give you tools for leadership and managing people, human beings. Human management is the theme of everything we're talking about here. Let's kick this off. Manny, first, you want to talk about how you started this project and kind of your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is, well, I guess our connection is from the Navy. So as a hospital corpsman, I do have that's where my military background comes back from. It's 8 years of that. And then other than that, it's really human resources and operations leadership. So a lot of my work was with UPS as like a very large enterprise to even a smaller organization with about 400 employees, which was like Casino Queen. And now as the HR director for Community Link. So my background, I've worked with nonprofits, small companies, medium-sized companies, and even enterprises. And what I feel like I bring to specifically this conversation is that experience of scaling and seeing what a good infrastructure looks like at different levels. So I'm really excited for the topic of this being strategic leadership. I think that there's a lot of different opportunities, a lot of small nuances that people don't understand. Culture building, which I know that we are really excited about, that we've talked about all the time already. And basically the way that this started was through Everything HR. So with Everything HR, the podcast, my goal was really just to create a format that I could speak to people about human resources. And that turned into supporting my business Omni HR by getting kind of leads as well through it. So total honesty, I have no problem with my transparency. I was using Everything HR in multiple different ways for my business as well as just personal fun. And that's what this project is all about. It's all about personal fun. I want to enjoy these conversations because they're topics that I not only find interesting, but feel like I can bring enough value to that conversation. And I'm really, really excited to talk to you specifically because of your background on these different topics.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I just want to put it into stone exactly. I'm in the same place. These are about fun conversations, but what's more fun than being able to provide tools for people, information for people, kind of spread our examples that we're working on, And so I think that's the reason both you and I were really excited to kick this off. So a little bit of my background, folks. I'm going to keep it short and sweet because you'll be hearing a lot from me, and we'll kind of hit on some stories as we go on through this journey together. Like Manny said, him and I met. I was in the Marine Corps at the time. I was a Force Reconnaissance Marine. If you don't know what Force Recon is, totally fine. Hardly anybody does. The joke is usually they're the kind of redheaded stepchild of the special operations community. I won't blow it up into something bigger than it was, that's for sure. If you think I was out there hunting bin Laden, no, those were guys way higher level than me. But I had a lot of great experience, deployed to a lot of different countries, mostly, obviously, combat in Afghanistan, but also a lot of missions where I'm advising other militaries and interacting with them, training with them in a way that benefits the goals of the United States of America. And man, a lot of fun experiences. I learned a lot, and most of the experiences I'm probably going to talk about on this forum are my mistakes, because that was the real experiences that stuck with me and taught me a lot about leadership from the military. After I got out of the military, I started a business down in San Diego. It's essentially a cooperative between tourism industries. Again, learned a lot about the private sector, and it was an eye-opener for me. We're going to talk about military-style leadership and how you can't just copy and paste it into the civilian world. And if you do that, you're going to do what I did, and you're going to run up against a brick wall, and you're going to have a lot of frustrating nights, a lot of glasses of whiskey trying to figure out what you're doing wrong. But that was something that I learned a lot from that experience. Again, my life has taken so many left and right turns. I don't even know where I'm going to end up next month sometimes. But I found my way into law enforcement. Ended up doing a 10-year career in law enforcement. Served in several roles. The majority of my time I was serving on a SWAT team as a SWAT team leader. I worked my way up, obviously. Also served as a sniper, training coordinator, some other roles on that team. Again, my experience in the military was extensive. Learned a lot. I got to tell you, and I got to give props out to the folks that are still doing the job. Law enforcement, you are deployed 24/7, man. I mean, it is a grind, and that was a whole nother period of my life where I learned a lot of lessons about leadership, especially in chaotic situations, especially in managing multiple types of personalities and figuring out how to get them to achieve the level of success that we did. Also, I spent time in an undercover capacity working for a federal task force. We combated human trafficking and then also large-scale drug operations, particularly cartel operations. I, at one point, was diagnosed with a disorder that has to do coming from some TBIs from my service in the Marine Corps. Just the reality of that situation, the lifestyle changes I had to make for my health, I knew that my law enforcement career couldn't continue. But then I started looking around. I'm like, okay, now what? How do I take these skills to careers of, very, very impressive. My resume looks impressive to a certain crowd anyways. But how do I apply that to civilian life? It was really my first time, diving headfirst into civilian life. And I had an opportunity to work with a company. I'm going to shout out to them just like I did on last time we had a conversation, because I really do. I love this company. I believe in everything they're doing, but they're a consulting firm called Afterburner Incorporated, based out of Florida. And they work with the big guys, Fortune 500, multinational. They are working with just movers and shakers in industry. And the whole concept is mostly fighter pilots, but also special operations folks, is to take lessons from those experiences and apply it to the world of business. My niche that I found while learning from those people and then going on to consult in those roles, my niche was kind of leadership and human management. And so then I got tired of living out of a suitcase and flying all over the world all the time for that. And I said, how about I start my own consulting firm and try to stay local? That's what I did. Started my company, Strategic Flow Consulting. We do very similar stuff to what Afterburner is doing, but on a much smaller scale. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses, which is a great opportunity because a lot of those size of businesses, those levels of management, they don't have the budget for Afterburner. I mean, Afterburner is high-level stuff, man. So to be able to provide essentially the same tactics and techniques that we use for these big companies to the real backbone of our economy, these small business owners, has just been an awesome journey. I've met some amazing people, and I really feel blessed to have found myself in that situation. So that's a very generalized idea of my background. I'm just going to echo what Manny said. We came to this idea, and Manny spearheaded it for us. And we want to just have conversations. And something that I'm passionate about, obviously in my background, is leadership. That's kind of what I want to kick it off today, man. I mean, I have this epiphany that happened, especially when I got into the consulting world. And I really believe we have a genuine crisis of leadership in our society right now. And it's leading to all these different problems on large scales, societal issues that we're dealing with, and on small scale, just individual life, sometimes your family life, right? It comes down to leadership. And the key point I want to really drive home, and not just with this conversation, but across the board, I'm like an evangelist for this stuff, man. I'm the crazy guy on the corner, standing on the box, screaming, "The end is near," Yes.
I love it though. You need that guy, you need that guy.
Sometimes you need a little crazy.
Yes, absolutely. And I cannot agree with you more on that end. Like, leadership isn't everything. And the fact that the next group has to have leaders built in, right? So where are they going to come from? It comes from the tough positions, the tough jobs, understanding real world tactics in like real situations, but then transforming that in a way that you can help a yogurt shop, a barber, like you can help all these different organizations. Absolutely. 100% with you.
Yeah, man. I mean, and just like you said, right? It's part of everything. It's a skill. Leadership is a skill. We have this image in our minds that leaders are just born into it. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely examples from history of people that kind of fell into a situation and they rose to the occasion. But if you don't think that if you look in their background that there was life experience that led them to have those capabilities, if you don't think they didn't make mistakes along the way and learn from it, then you're out of your mind, man. I mean, leadership is a skill. Think about it. You hire a new employee, what's the first thing you do? You onboard them and you train them. Do we do that with our leaders? Some do, but do they do it well? I don't know about that. I've been in some of this, especially like business leadership training. Oh, hey, you're a manager now. Here's your management training. And it is like, it's checking boxes, but it's not teaching me how to lead human beings.
And those are rare. Just that alone is so rare. Usually it's literally, you're a supervisor. Congratulations. Go now be a manager. Go now be a leader. And then it's just kind of that progression. So you have like general managers, you have like district managers, you have more and more, because companies will grow and those same people go up. So it really is like an integral part is that leadership. There's always going to be a structure, and there's almost no training.
Almost no training. I'm surprised when I go on consulting gigs and they're like, oh yeah, here's our leadership training. I'm like, holy smokes, you guys actually have training? I mean,
Yes.
It's garbage, but at least you have it, So we're not training it. And I think, it really starts way before we're talking about a business, we're talking about a company, a team you're leading. Gosh dang it. In our society right now, the issue starts even way before that. It starts when our kids are growing up. We have I know a lot of people like to make jokes. Americans are stupid, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you right now, I've been to 32 different countries in my life. We're doing pretty good. All right.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to skill stuff. I mean, there's stuff, my wife's a teacher. There's stuff she's teaching. And I'm like, she teaches first grade. And I'm like, you're teaching that in first grade? I'm like, dude, I was still playing with blocks and eating crayons. Now, I'm a Marine, so I'd never stopped eating crayons. But I mean, we're at least trying to keep pace with that stuff. Where we're failing is in stuff like leadership, stuff like interacting with other human beings in a way that is positive, and that's where we see a lot of these people coming into these roles. And it's not that they don't want to be good leaders. It's not that they don't want to. They want to rise to that occasion, but they have none of the tools and none of the training. And that's a real problem. And I mean, if you listen to only this episode of Mission Critical, at least take this with you. You got to train leadership. It's a skill, man. It's a skill.
There's the one.
I want to kick a theory off on you. I want to kick a theory off on you and get your opinion. I'm thinking about this stuff. I'm like 4 beers deep, just like trying. And this is the kind of stuff that I think about, right? One of my theories as to why we're having a problem with leadership right now in our society as a whole is that people are so self-absorbed. We are in the social media age. You know what I'm saying? Like everything we do really is for ourselves. And as you know, leadership has nothing to do with yourself, right? We talk about servant leadership. People throw that word around. They have no freaking idea what it means. So that's my theory, man. I think the generation that's filming themselves in selfie mode, everything they do, they're not thinking about other people. Therefore, they're not thinking about leadership. So even when they get put in these positions, they're looking at it through this lens of how does this help me? How does this make me look? How does this affect me?
Absolutely.
Which if you do that, go ahead. I'd like to hear.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think there is a giant philosophy, like a whole philosophical conversation on just the current social norms. But I have to agree with at least that portion 100%. Like, yes, the thing is that people look outwardly to compare. And I don't think that's a right now thing. I think that's always been the case. People are always comparing themselves because there's always been that hierarchy. And the thing is that whenever you have a hierarchy, you want to go to the top and you push until you stop, right? So that's kind of one of those things is leaders will just keep pushing. And you're right. A lot of it is internal. I want to look good. I want to be a supervisor. Oh, I'm now this age. I want to be a manager. You know what I'm saying? And that's what the climb is. That's the rat race is you're focused on yourself versus, like you said, everyone else. Good leaders do care about the team. Like that is the motivation. And for sure, you have to have ambition. So like no one's going to be a leader without that ambition. And so you have to be a little selfish. I don't think that's a negative, but I do think that having that switch, knowing that I want the best for myself, but the only way I can get that is by bringing everyone else up. I'm all about it, man. I am so with you right now. 4 beers deep. I'm not right now, but I'm with you.
There you go, man. That's what I'm talking about. Well, I'd say, and here's my solution, because I think you hit the point. Like, yeah, you have to have some of that selfishness. It's like, you read these studies and they find out that like 95% of fighter pilots could be diagnosable narcissists, and it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? It's like, well, yeah, you kind of got to be a bit of a narcissist to get strapped to a multi-million-dollar rocket and fly through the air at the speeds that like, you got to be a little crazy, man.
Yes.
So why are we surprised to that? I think it's kind of the same with leadership. There is some of that, but what I wish people understood, I'm going to use an example. So, and this is something that I learned from the military. I had a really good mentor that I was a young Marine. Again, I was cocky, thought I knew everything, and I didn't know jack shit. But this guy was just an amazing leader and mentor. Really, I still to this day credit him with a lot of my success in my life. Just little lessons that he probably doesn't even realize he taught me. But one of the things he said early on when we were learning about mindset, as far as, hey, doing a raid, getting into combat, bullets flying up and down range. This is not normal human behavior, right? This is a very specific set of circumstances. And one of the things he said to us, he goes, listen, family is the most important thing. Okay, yeah, roger that. Take care of your families. Yeah, hey, this is awesome, cool. He goes, but in order to do that, when we're on a mission, you have no family. Do you understand me? And I'm like, hey, what? That seems contradictory. And at the time, I didn't understand what he was saying. As I got more experience, more mentorship from this guy and others, I realized the point he's trying to get across is by serving the mission and focusing on the mission, you'll come home alive. Your brothers, your sisters in arms will come home alive, and therefore you can better serve your family. And so it's this weird situation where in order to better serve my family, I have to completely forget about them and focus on my mission, because if I'm thinking about them, I'm going to hesitate before I go through that door. And that's where real problems happen. And that was a hard lesson, and I had to go through a lot of stuff to really get that solidified. But I think it applies to this too. I get that, yeah, maybe you want to move up. You want to hit that climb. I love that. That's awesome. We need people like that. What I want people to understand is if you want to climb in a successful way, a way that can be maintained, where you're not climbing over people's backs, but you're climbing because people realize, hey, this guy, everyone that he leads, everyone that's surrounding him starts doing better. So I want to keep pushing this person up because everything they touch is gold, And so in the way of serving other people, focusing on other people's problems, goals, training, mentorship, by doing that, it's not altruistic. In the end, you're going to make yourself more successful as well. An example I like to use with the business side of the world. I was doing consulting for a company. I won't use their name because this isn't the most flattering of stories, but they had a new guy that was in charge of their sales department. Smart dude, great pedigree. I mean, I'm looking at his resume going, hey, good choice, guys. You did a good job. One of my jobs was to give him some leadership training and get him rolling with the team. And I started noticing little red flags. And the biggest one I noticed is when I talked about their commission structure. And I recommended as a consultant, hey, let's adjust this. I want these guys to have the ability to make more money. And this manager did not like what I was saying. And his reasoning was, well, that means that they might be able to make more money than me. And I'm looking at him going, that's your mindset as a sales manager? I'm like, dude, I got to take you back down to basics here. It's like, listen, any good sales manager should have the goal of having their salespeople make more on commission to a point where it's making more than you as your salary.
Absolutely. You need sharks.
Exactly. That's what you want. And I thought, I said, any sales manager, you better have the goal of all your people should be making more money than you. Because you know what actually ends up happening? If they're all making more money than you, that means the company's making more money. And guess what you're going to get at the end of the year? A nice juicy bonus or promotion. And that's the long game mindset, man. I mean, the short game is I want to make more money than my subordinates. That's your priority, dude? Yep. Are you kidding me?
God, I love that. Like, that perception, like that picture right there, dude, that is a snapshot for the ages. 100%. I've seen it so many times in places. Sales is a great way because the commission structure is very black and white. It's very easy to see. But I feel like that idea just breaks down so easily all across. Like, managers always want to view themselves higher as their team members, not realizing that they're just like you.
Yeah.
Like, it is your responsibility. I love it.
Yeah. And like you said, you hit the nail on the head. And I think it kind of goes back to how we started this talk about that self-absorbedness that we're seeing so much in society these days. They want people that get put in these management positions. They want to feel superior. They hold on to that title like it's just this precious little thing. I'll tell you, man, I saw a lot of it in law enforcement. I personally believe that 80% of the cops out there are absolute heroes, day to day, day and night. While I sleep and eat and sit at home super safe, these folks are out there putting their lives on the line. I've seen it firsthand. But that other 20%, we got some issues there. I'm just being honest, man. And I can say that I did the job for 10 years. I'm telling you, there's definitely a segment. You see a lot of these stories in the news and whatnot, and you go, what the heck is going on with this cop? I will be the first to tell you there are bad cops out there, people who should not have the authority and the firearm on their hip. Oh my goodness. There are bad ones out there. And one of the issues I see a lot of times would be people that they finally got a little authority in your life. I mean, do you realize a police officer is like one of the few people who has the power to take your rights away? I mean, that's a huge deal. I know you and I, we both swore enough to uphold the Constitution of the United States. You do the same thing as a law enforcement officer. That is a huge deal, a huge responsibility. And some of these people, they get in a position of authority, and they're so obsessed with having the authority that they don't realize that they would be better at their job if they did exactly what we're talking about with everything else. Serve the people you're working with. And you see it all around. And I don't know exactly how to change that sometimes. I think that there are some people that mindset, they're not getting talked out of it. And I've got some tricks and tactics I use in education, but I just think that there are some people that, man, that's just what they're all about. And those are the kind of people, if you do have a team and you've got someone like that and you recognize it and you can't train it out of them, I mean, that's a poison, man. You got to get rid of it.
I really like that. Because what you were saying is, you said you didn't know how to deal with it, but I think that's exactly how you deal with it. It's right. Good leadership, because good leaders, they mentor, they train, they coach, and then at the end of the day, they hold their team accountable. Yeah. And what's the next thing after accountability? If you are holding someone accountable and they still are not doing the job, then you know that they're not the person. Right. And good leaders know when that time has to be called. So I think that's your answer, man. It's creating good leaders. This is what cuts out the rest.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, again, it goes right back to our theme, right? There's a crisis of leadership. If we could solve leadership, I think a lot of these other problems we're going to deal with, or we are dealing with rather, I think they're going to start being easier to overcome. Which I just want to say, solve leadership is hilarious. Like, just the way, like, they could give it like that, like such an abstract. If we could solve leadership. Solve leadership.
Yes.
There again, I'll tell you, and I don't want to give too much away on this. I'm going to be a little vague. There is a team that does consulting out there, and the way that they introduce themselves, they do kind of like large scale events, like your annual sales meeting or whatever. The way they introduce themselves is they'll have whoever's the leader of this giant group up on stage talking, and they break into the room, make a bunch of noise, do a bunch of funny stuff. And then they get up there with that leader and they go, all right, guys, we're going to solve all your problems. We're going to solve your leadership problem. And they take him out and they escort him out of the room. And it's just a joke, obviously. But there's actually like a kernel of truth there. Like, if there's issues, you got to trace it back to leadership. And to kind of stick on that theme of like, hey, if I've got this problem child on my team, how am I going to deal with it? The first question you always got to ask yourself is, let me look at what I'm doing. What am I doing? Am I giving this person the tools to do better than they're doing? Am I training this person properly? Am I tailoring my style of training and communication to how this individual needs to be talked to, communicated with? Now, if you answer all those and you go, yeah, I've done all that, and you can honestly look yourself in the mirror and say, I have done that all to the best of my ability, Well, then just fire him. I mean, because you've done everything.
I love this, man.
You gotta act
Like
someone eventually.
100%. I love this, dude. I cannot believe that you said the first thing is look at yourself, dude. 100%.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the reasons people are resistant to that, and this is how I try to, when I do the beauty of being a consultant. I was just talking to someone about this the other day. The beauty of being a consultant is I get to fly in for a little while, be like, you're messed up here, you got to fix that. All right, I'm going to go home, take my money. Oh my God. It's honestly, my job's easy compared to actually staying in the trenches doing the fight. But one of the things that I think people run against resistance when you start telling them, hey, you need to look at yourself. I've seen people that kind of start to roll their eyes like, I've never heard that one before. Well, the key is that I'm telling you that because if you do that, then yes, I'm getting to the point where I'm not going to dance around anymore. Axe that person, get rid of them. If you've done all the right things, and from the HR side, if you've documented that, you got to get rid of these people. And so, I'm not telling people to look inward, and it's not this like hippie meditation thing. What it is like, hey, I want to make sure that you have the tools, because one, if you just get rid of somebody because they're not performing well, you don't know the talent that they actually have. I've seen some people that, I'm going to tell another story. I love stories, man. An individual in some training, early on training, getting into the reconnaissance community, scrawny little dude. Definitely like you're total nerd, playing Dungeons and Dragons instead of drinking beers with the boys, and just kind of a quiet, awkward person. And, how military, especially it's an all male unit, how it can get, man. I mean, that dude took a lot of crap from people, but he made it through the training. He passed, definitely not top of the class, but he passed. Fast forward years down the road, and I'm not going to go into all the details because I don't necessarily have this person's permission to tell these stories, although I'm sure he wouldn't care. Dude's a war hero. He saved his team leader's life. Man, I almost get choked up talking about it because he was the last guy you would expect to be that. And he was the first guy that went running into fire to save his team leader's life. And I genuinely believe he's a dang war hero. And what I'm trying to get out of that story is that the reason that he was there to save his team leader's life under fire, put a tourniquet on him, and continue to return fire, get him extracted, was because the leaders that he had in the recon community looked at him and said, here's a goofball. Here's someone that everybody else has written off. I'm going to make him into the best that he can be. And they put that effort into him. They trained him the right way. They communicated to him in a way that he would understand. And that's why he performed the way he did and was able to perform the way he did. He had the training and he had the confidence. And it's thanks to that leadership, he was in a position where he could save someone's life. And that's the power of good leadership. So I don't want to look at someone that you go, they're not performing, and go, yeah, we just got to get rid of them. Let's get someone better. Because you might be missing out on a hero. You might be getting rid of a hero who just needed a little bit better leadership. But the other side of that coin, like we talked about, if I've done all these things, if I can genuinely look at myself and say, I've done everything I can to get the best out of this person, and they refuse to do it, then yeah, you got to cut away the dead weight. And that's the reality. That can be hard sometimes. Yeah. That can be hard.
Yeah, got to have that line in the sand. Yeah. Like there has to be that accountability, has to have that bladed edge that
absolutely
people know that you can cut.
Yeah. And a lot of people shy away from these conversations today. And again, let's get back to, it's a societal issue, which I think can be traced back to leadership. Being a leader is not being loved. Being a leader is not being the bearer of good news all the time. Yeah. There are aspects of leadership where you got to do the hard things for the good of the mission, whether it be growing your business or leading a special operations team. At the end of the day, you got to do the hard things. And people seem, leaders, young leaders especially, I'm seeing now young leaders, they are timid. They don't want to step up and assert themselves. They often know the solution. I mean, I've had these conversations. I'm like, hey, you realize Jimmy over there, he sucks and you're probably going to have to get rid of him. He's like, oh man, but I went to high school with Jimmy, and one time he bought me beer because he got facial hair before me. And I'm like, yeah, dude, sorry, that's not going to fly here, And I think a lot of it is just kind of feeling a little timid and being like, I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to make him feel bad, or, but then he won't have a job. And it's like, hey, I get it. And that's part of the reason I am a big believer in look at yourself first, do everything you possibly can for him. But there comes a point as a leader where, you got to do what's right for the whole. If you're leading a whole team, you got to do what's right for the whole. You would be doing a disservice to every single other person in your team, in your company, whatever it is, if you don't do that hard thing. And then, and there are problems that come out of it, and that's the burden of leadership. But again, we get back to that societal issue. I don't want burden of leadership. I want I want all the benefits of leadership, and there are benefits to leadership. I mean, let's be honest. Let's be honest about it, and this, right? In your own company and stuff, there are benefits to leadership. But you get those benefits because you take on the burden. And I'm seeing too many people that want to be handed those benefits, and they don't want to do the dirty work it takes to deserve them. Absolutely.
Yes. Because like you said, when it comes to society, I think it's comfort. I think it's from that comfort, you get soft, like you get comfortable, you get complacent. Like that's what it is people don't realize that to sharpen a sword, you have to rub it against metal. Like you have to, fight, you have to grind.
Right.
And you as a person, when you overcome these obstacles, you individually get better. Like it's that time over a long enough time horizon, like pushing forward. That's what it is. Like it's moving forward, and leadership just comes to that. It's that self-evaluation of realizing, okay, I've got to make that tough call, or don't be a leader. Like that's the other option. Either do a good job or just don't do it. Because that's usually how it is, like,
dude, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody has to be a leader. And I think that's the other problem is some people get into these positions of leadership because they're like, oh, I don't want to turn down a promotion. Yep. And it's like, and I get that 100%, man, especially right now. This is kind of like times are tough. The more money I can make, the better, man. Gosh dang, I got to take out a second mortgage just to buy eggs. It's ridiculous. But so I get that initial desire, but why not instead hone your skills at negotiating, sit down with the person who wants to give you a raise and say, hey, listen, the reason you want to give me a raise is because I'm the best in this company at the job that I do now. How about instead of promoting me, I said raise, I meant promotion. Instead of promoting me, how about you give me a raise? And I'll stay here and I'll continue being the best. And maybe I'll take on some training roles that my promotion would have been and kind of mentor the people around me. But I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to be, and it's okay to say that. I wish more people would have the guts to just say, I don't want to be a leader. I don't want the responsibility. I don't want the burden. I want to do my job, do it to the best of my ability and go home. Awesome. I'm all for that. I've got a really close friend of mine. One of my favorite people in the world. And again, I probably should have talked to him before because I should have known I would use him as an example. But I won't use his name here. He got into law enforcement same time I did, and we went through the academy together. And he did well in the academy, made it through whatever, got to his agency that he was going to work for. And there's a process that law enforcement, they call FTO, field training officer. So you go through, on the job training, essentially OJT, but you're being evaluated constantly. And that's where most people drop out of law enforcement. And he was hitting his marks. He was doing all the things. But one day he had a realization and he said, I'm not made for this, and I'm going to get somebody hurt. And some people were like, what are you doing? So he quit. He said, hey, you guys, I'm going to get somebody hurt. I'm not made for this. I don't have the mindset or the desire to do it. So, this isn't for me. And I've gotten into some heated arguments. People are like, oh man, let a coward, blah, blah, blah. That's bullshit. And that dude, to me, has the confidence and the competence to understand this isn't for me. And he also had, ironically enough, right? That's a leadership quality to realize if I do this for my own ego, because there is some ego to passing the FTO and everything. And again, this guy would have passed. He would have passed. But he just said, this isn't me. This isn't my personality. And part of it is he's just a nice guy. Like, just too nice. And he trusts everybody. And guess what? When you're a cop, nobody tells you the truth. You believe it or not, right? Nobody tells you the truth. And you can't always be nice. And now he's gone on and he works with evidence, and he manages incredible amounts of evidence and how it gets handled and destroyed or given back to people. And he's moved his way up in that group, and he loves his job. He's extremely good at it. And the reason he's in that position, and he's very happy with his life, and he should be, is because he had the guts to say, this isn't for me. And I wish more people would do that when someone puts that leadership opening in front of them. If it's not for you, there's no shame in saying, this just isn't for me. I'm good at what I do, and this isn't what I want to do. Because as we've said from the very beginning, right, leadership in itself is a skill. A lot of people think leadership is a title. I got a job once, and the role was something. Maybe you know how titles are nowadays. Like, you're the deputy director of directing directors, and then you look at the org chart, and you're like, that dude he's not in charge of anybody. What's that title even mean? So I think what happened was companies were like, hey, we can't give you a raise, but we can give you a different title, make you feel good about yourself.
That's a common practice nowadays.
Oh, like, it is.
That is a common business practice. People like junior thing and
yeah,
co or whatever.
Yeah. No, I love it. You see it a lot in sales too. You're like, well, I'm the the senior regional manager for the Northwest region of sales, and I go, oh dang, how many people do you? How many direct reports do you have? None. But I manage myself, which is really hard to do. It's like, okay, dude, whatever. If you want to hold on to that title. But back to my story. So I get this role, and it was a manager role, and I had it was small, maybe 5 direct reports, nothing big. And they're like, well, does this role name? Because they're a new company, and does this role name make? And I look, does it make sense to you? Is this going to work? I'm like, dude, I don't care if you call me office bitch. Okay, I'm just going to do what I have to do and work with my people. I was like, I don't care about my title. No one walks into my office and goes, excuse me, Mr. Business Operations Manager, can I do this? No, dude, I just want to do my job. I don't need a title to be a leader. And if you need a title to be a leader, come on, man. But man, we see a lot of that. And I'm not surprised that you're telling me like, oh yeah, that's an actual practice that companies are doing. Because you see so much of it. Oh, I'm the director of blah, 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 blah. They got their business card made out of like freaking metal for some reason. And you're like, what the heck? Like, is this guy a freaking CEO or something? Oh, no, he just runs himself. Okay. All right. Whatever. But that goes back to this self-absorbed culture, man. I mean, people want the title. Gosh, I think there's people out there who want the title more than they want success or money. They're like, well, I want the title.
Yeah, it's a self-evaluation for sure. I think that you're absolutely right. Like I said, that hierarchy, I think that's it. Our entire perception, like our being within like the universe, it's all just personal perception. Right. And when you're looking at it like that, and you look at it through all the 8 billion people in the world, like that's it. They're all just trying to get theirs, Yeah. And 100%. The big thing that I think that the biggest takeaway, I think specifically from this, is being able to be ambitious and to move forward and want that for yourself. Like some people may not want the money. Like they really do it for the title. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like for me, I'll be totally honest. I had that mindset for a little bit. Like I wanted to be, an E5, right? Like I wanted to be a hospital corpsman second class,
put those stripes on, baby.
Exactly. Like that's the thing. And then when I went into HR, like I wanted to be an HR director, an HR business partner, and a chief human resource officer. Like that was important to me. And money wasn't that valuable to me because I had enough at the, what I'm saying? Like I always live within my means with the, debt.
You have the means to be in debt. Yeah, we all do. All right.
Yeah. But like, the money wasn't always it. It was for me, it was like the prestige of the title. So like, I get it, but I didn't let that stop me from as I went up. Like, how can I help my people? How can I mentor them? How can I coach them? Like, what do they want? And maybe that's a different path. Like, that's a big thing when it comes to leadership is realizing like, hey, Like, maybe this isn't for you. Like, that's just a thing. Like, why do you suck so bad at this job? Total honesty, you don't care. You don't think that it's worth your time. Like, that's it. And if any of that's true, then you shouldn't be here anyways.
Right.
And a good leader can identify that. And
100% right on, man. And I think, you say, well, hey, I had this mindset at first, and I don't want to get too far. People think I'm on this extreme side. Some of that mindset, I think that's just human nature. Like you said, we're hierarchical beings. And I know there are people out there right now that have like 8 PhDs from some stupid liberal arts college, and they're gonna be like, we're not hierarchical beings, blah blah blah, and, whatever. Come on, man. I don't care. We're hierarchical beings. We see it every single day of our lives. We experience it. That's how we interact with each other. So I think it's completely natural to human nature to have something in us that desires to be at the top end of that hierarchy. And I don't think that that's evil, and you shouldn't feel bad if you start thinking that or feeling that way. But just recognize that, okay, if you're going that direction, recognize that it means that you're going to have this burden, you're going to have this service. Your job is now to serve all the people that you're leading. It's not a calling that is based around the title. It's okay to desire the title. It's okay to desire the prestige. But what you should really desire is truly leading people, and they see it. If behind closed doors without you there, if they would tell other people, this guy was a leader, this gal was a leader, she took our team to the next level, without you there, so they're not just kissing your ass. That's what you should desire. I told someone recently in a meeting, and after you hear, you'll understand why they this individual got upset and decided that they didn't want to be my client anymore. But they're lost, man, because this is, to me, so basic. I said, if you have to remind your people, because he kept going around, I'm the boss here, and I'm the man, I said, if you have to remind your people that you're their leader, then guess what? You are not their leader. You're not.
That's crazy.
You're not their leader. If you have to remind them of your title, you are not their leader. When my team leader worked in the recon community, my team leader walked into our room, like our conference room, team room, whatever. He didn't have to go, all right, guys, it's me, your team leader. You got to listen to me because I'm the team leader. No, we just knew, because he was a good leader, because he inspired us, because we knew that he wanted the best for us. We knew that he wanted to bring us home alive. So there's no question there, right? Again, he didn't have to remind us of his title. He was just doing the job. And so I think that's the difference in mindset, is as you start moving up, if you start getting obsessed with just the title, I want the title, I want the prestige, or frankly, just the money, that can't be at the heart of what you do. And I don't want to scare people off from leadership either. I'm telling you, it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life, is being involved in the concept of leadership, leading people. It's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to be on my deathbed and go, I wish I would have become vice president of whatever company. No, I'm going to think back to the hopefully positive impact I've had on people in their lives. I'm going to think back to, did I lift people up? Did I lead them right? That's where the real value in leadership comes in, I think. But just to hit back on this, because I feel like we keep coming back to this. People are kind of just self-absorbed. They're kind of looking at themselves, and this is why we're having this crisis. All right, so for those who are listening, not watching, we'll cut back in. We had some technical issues, so probably had to cut some stuff out here, but let's hope this works. For those who are listening, not watching, what we're seeing is a guy's walking up to a podium in front of like a White House press conference background with a couple American flags behind him. Let's see how this goes.
Apologize for being late. My wife just died. All right, we've got a lot on the agenda today, so let's begin. At noon, the president will be meeting with Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki via video teleconference, and the purpose of this meeting is going to be to discuss some of the security issues surrounding the newly appointed Iraqi government officials. And yes, Matthews?
Ted, I'm so sorry. Your wife.
Yeah, well, as you might expect, the pain's unlike anything I've ever experienced before, but I've got a lot to do today, so let's keep moving, okay? Maura?
I'm so sorry to hear that, sir. Jay was a really wonderful one.
Yes, I can confirm that. But more, I actually made a pledge to the president and to the people of the United States to keep the nation informed as to the activities of its leader, the leader of the free world. So let's keep this going. Next question, Jim.
Can I ask what happened to Janie?
Jim, what happened was she died. It was a car accident. We can't just bring the entire nation to a halt because of it. So does anybody have a question for the president? Yes?
Is there any mention by the president about Kim Jong-il's latest statements regarding North Korea's nuclear facilities?
Well, I'm afraid I can't answer that at this time, Maura. I was not at the president's briefing this morning. I was identifying my wife's body at that time. However, I will find out more about the subject and be happy to answer any questions about it later in the day. Okay?
All right, man. I'm going to stop it heavy, right?
Dude, it's
Like, what?
terrible to laugh, but he was
let
a
me make you
champ.
feel better. Let me make you feel better about laughing. It's fake. That never happened.
Okay.
It's from The Onion. A bunch of people believed it really happened and it went
That's
viral
hilarious.
and all that, but it's fake. And I think they're making a point about like being forced to work even when you have stuff happen. But I think that, and one of the beauties of comedy is that it allows us to take things to the extreme, but there's always actually really some good life lessons in there. Now, am I saying that if someone in your company or team that you work for, if their partner dies, that you need to make sure they come into work? Because that's obviously not. Oh my gosh, it's like kind of painful to watch. But at the end of the day, while they're making a joke, they're also kind of exemplifying this idea of like, and you hear him say, he goes, "Hey, the American people, the business of the country does not stop. I got to be here." And I actually wouldn't be surprised if there are some leaders out there that would pretty much do that exact thing. They might not make it into a point at a press conference, but it shows that, I know if I lost my wife, my partner, it would be absolutely devastating. And I know that this was a humorous video from The Onion, but to take it to that sort of real thing. And I think later in the video, he even makes a point. He's like, "Yeah, all I really want to do right now is lay down behind this podium and cry." And I think that's where most of us would be. But it kind of leads, again, not to that extreme, but it kind of leads to the idea of like, wait, he's thinking about, okay, at the end of the day, this is what's best for my team. This is what's best for the country. I have a job to do, and my job isn't about me. Because if it was about me, I would do that. I would lay behind the podium and cry. But I do have a job to do, and this is important. This is how I'm going to move forward with this. So it's kind of one of those like darkly funny videos that I use sometimes to give that kind of lesson, because at the end of the day, again, that's what leadership is. And leadership is it's making a sacrifice. It's putting others before yourself. And I know that almost sounds cliche these days, but it's true.
No, I would even say a step further, not just leadership, but honestly, it connects to your devotion to the mission. In my opinion, the military was great about that fact. Your feelings don't matter. The mission is what matters.
Right.
Like, I think when you talk about people being focused on themselves, like, that's totally true. I think another thing is genuinely just people being soft. Like, they don't care enough about an external factor to drive them to do those things.
Right.
Like, you have to buy into it as well. And a leader helps their team buy in. Absolutely. But in general, like, you as an individual, you have to buy in. Like, you have to believe that and do the things you need. Like, why do they say that parenting is one of the hardest things to do? It's because no matter what, you have to do it. Like, you don't clock out. You don't get, you don't get to clock out. Like, there's no, everyone's sick in my house, including me. Well, guess what? I'm about to go to the store, pick up meds, cook, clean, do what needs to be done, because you have to do it. The military does a great job of instilling that. No matter what happens, no matter if you got drunk the night before, you're going on that ruck run in the morning, right? Like, no matter if, like, it doesn't matter. Like, your feelings don't matter. The outside world doesn't even matter. Like, when we're deployed, like, that's it. You don't get to leave for the most part.
Right.
And if you do, it's like extreme circumstances. But other than that, this is it. Like, you were dedicated to the mission. And I think that that's a connection that anyone, not just leaders, can learn from. But I think the big point when it comes to leadership is that leaders instill it. Like leaders are the ones that give that buy-in to the team. Like, but you only get that by, like you said, looking at yourself internally. Like, am I doing everything needed? Because the way that I view leadership is your team will never do more than like 80% of what you do. So like, if you won't clean the toilets, if you won't, do the books, if you hate the numbers, like whatever it is, if you're not doing it, you cannot expect your team to do it. And obviously different jobs, different expectations for sure. But the sentiment is there based off the actions themselves. Like, how far are you willing to go for the mission? And then you can't expect your staff to go farther than you're willing to go.
Right.
So I think that that's a really big part that the military does a great job of instilling, and other areas as well. Really good leaders can make that happen. Otherwise, it's just super ambitious people who just like are very self-responsible, but that's kind of where it comes from. Like, it's just leadership has to be there. Get your team to buy in, get them to understand that at the end of the day, their feelings don't matter. The mission is what matters. And then a good leader also cares for them. Like, you want your team to be like, I know I'm sick, but I'm going to work. And then you as a good leader are like, I really appreciate it, but you need to look after you. Like, that's the dynamic. That's what good leadership looks like. And that's what a team that cares looks like. So I really, really like that example, even though
dark. Yeah, I know. But, and, I think, like you said, the military is so good at that, from day one. I'm sure there's a book, actually, and I can't remember the name of the author now, and that bothers me, but maybe you've heard of the book, The Mission, the Men and Me. I don't know, but that concept,
I haven't. No.
It's a good book. I read it before, but gosh, this is years ago, when I was in the military. And, that concept is kind of drilled into you from day one in the military. And you're constantly being told that mission, men, and me in that order. The mission is number one, no matter what. But after that comes the men, meaning the people you're leading. And yes, I use men in the general term. It could mean women too, mankind, the people you're dealing with. And after that, the very last thing is me. Now, a key to that is me is on the list. You got to take care of yourself. You got to do right by yourself too. It's just not the top priority. There's a concept in the SWAT world, and there's actually a lot of controversy around it right now. And I'm definitely not here to talk tactics, but a concept that's been around for a long time called HIOS. Have you ever heard of HIOS?
I don't think so.
Situation. So all it is called the priorities of life. And so when you're trying to make decisions on what to do, if you have this concept ingrained in you, it kind of gives you the tools to make those decisions. HIOS stands for H, hostages. So if you're in a hostage rescue, no one else's life matters more than the hostage. So if that means if you got to sacrifice yourself, you got to do it. If you got to sacrifice the suspect who's holding the hostage, obviously you got to do it. And listen, the suspect's on the list too. We live in a free country. Cops, there's no Judge Dredd around here. All right. Cops don't get to convict you. They only get to arrest you. So, that's why the suspect gets on the list. They're just not very high up. So again, hostages are number one. Number two is innocent people. So just people on standing by, right? And then number three is O for officers, meaning your teammates, the guy, people on the team. And then the last priority is the suspect. And again, there's a reason the suspect's on that priority list, because they are still a human life and their life matters. And if you can resolve that situation, protecting the hostages, protecting the innocent people, protecting your team, if you can resolve that situation and still protect the suspect, then you absolutely should do it. Morally, I think it's your obligation, especially in our country where we have very stringent rights, and that I'm very thankful for. But again, having that concept of like, hey, what are my priorities here? You have to really build that. And I've done this exercise with people. Say, what are your priorities on your team? Well, I want to get promoted next year, so I need to reach these numbers. And I go, that's your priorities? Okay, let's rethink this, buddy. Let's re-examine this. Hey, well, my priority is for all of us to be more successful. Okay, what are you willing to get rid of in order to reach that priority? Are you willing to get rid of the bottom person on your team? If it comes to that, Are they higher up on the priority than they should be? And so, and every example is unique, and you kind of got to tailor make it to your team, your situation, what exactly you're doing. But at the end of the day, you have to go through that exercise with yourself and understand what your priorities are. And again, like I said, mission, men, me, you got to put yourself on there too. But I better not see yourself up at the top. It's on the list, but you ain't number one, so I think it's a great concept, and the military does such a good job. My time on SWAT, such a good job of ingraining that sort of idea into you. And speaking with the mission, the men and me, I was doing some research. I'm like, okay, I really want to get examples of like leaders that nobody has any idea who they are, but they're leaders, right? And one that I found was this guy, kind of a funny name. I'm looking at my notes here. William Wilberforce. William Wilberforce. He was a British politician, and he was an abolitionist. This is obviously in the 18th, 19th centuries, late 18th century. Slavery was a thing. The transatlantic slave trade was one of the things that he was really focused on. We got to stop this, on a moral ground. And nobody knows his name, but without him, several of the acts and legislation that went through to essentially abolish slavery in British Parliament would have never happened. In 1807, the Slave Trade Act passed. I'm reading here, abolishing the transatlantic slave trade in Britain. However, Wilberforce continued working to abolish slavery altogether around the world. He lived just long enough to see the passage of the Slavery Abolition Act in 1833, which ended slavery across the British Empire. And again, no one knew his name. Even at the time, he was not the front runner. He wasn't the one in front giving speeches. He was the one doing the dirty work behind the scenes, making deals with members of Parliament. We all know how dirty politics is. Guess what? It was that way in the 18th century too. So he was the one, kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes. He got no glory. Nobody gave him credit. There's a reason that I had no idea who William Wilberforce was. Never once heard. No school book. Nobody had ever told me this guy's name. And then I start researching. I'm like, geez, without him, there's no, at least not in the time period that it happened, it wouldn't have gotten done. Think of the impact that this guy had. The British Empire, don't know if everybody knows this, slavery was kind of a big industry for them, right, at the time. And this guy, through his life's work, not being in the limelight, is what led to that being eventually abolished. Now, obviously, there was a long way to go after that. But I'm thankful that he got to see the fruits of his labor. But I guarantee you, if we were to dig him out of the grave right now and ask him and say, hey, if you would have died, a year before that act passed, would you still have felt fulfilled and successful in your life? And I guarantee you, a guy like that is going to say yes, because he's about the mission first. And his mission was abolishing slavery. So again, that's just a great example of someone who was in a position of leadership. I mean, he was without a doubt a leader in the Parliament, but he didn't need to be in the limelight. He didn't need to get all the accolades that come with that leadership. And when he essentially achieved the goal that he had, a very noble, honorable goal, he still didn't need the limelight. And I think that there's just such a huge lesson in that, and that's a hard thing to do. But the reason that he was probably so effective in getting this done in Parliament, in the messy, ugly game of politics, was because of that mindset. The mission was all he was focused on. And that is leadership. That's true leadership. If you asked anybody in Parliament at the time, they would have told you that guy was a leader. And I love stories like that. I love looking up stories like that because too often when we study leadership, we read biographies of, Alexander the Great, just like these big names, and it's not always the big names. It's not always the ones that end up on the books or the posters or standing up in front of a giant crowd. I think some of the best leaders in society today is the same way. Some of the best leaders are the ones who aren't in front of the camera all the time. One hard line for me on this show is I'm not going to talk politics because it's all corrupt from left to right. I don't care. It's all a mess, man. So this is not a place. We say we want to have fun. That's why I ain't talking politics. But I think we all know on both sides, there's certain people in Congress that somehow they always end up in front of a camera, and somehow they always end up giving a speech and on the news and talking to these anchors. Well, I guarantee you there are people in our Congress. I mean, gosh, I hope and pray these people exist, that they're never in front of a camera, but they're the ones that are actually getting stuff done. They're actually doing the work behind the scenes. They're the actual leaders. They're not just loud. Being loud is not leadership. And so, again, I guess I don't know because I don't know their names, but I pray that those people are existing right now in our government, regardless of your political beliefs. We're all Americans, or maybe you're listening from overseas. Welcome, but I don't care who's in charge. I just want to see this country succeed, and I think that that's what we need in order to succeed. Is that people that are putting the mission above the fame, above the getting likes on Instagram or something. I mean. Yeah. And again, like the whole theme of this conversation, we keep circling back to people are part of the reason we're having this issue with leadership. We're going to solve leadership. We're going to solve it. It's going to be wonderful. The reason we're having this problem is because people are so self-absorbed. They're looking at everything through the lens of themselves, including our leaders in government. A lot of them are looking through the lens of themselves. You might work your way up. I've seen people in some of these companies and they are completely self-absorbed, and I will not lie to you, they are very successful. They've gotten to where they're at, and they had to climb over people's backs and maybe stab some people in the back and, some of this stuff. But they reached where they wanted to be. And you know what, even if you reach that point, I just think that's not leadership. Just because you made it to some level in a hierarchy, that doesn't make you a leader. It doesn't at all. And you may on paper be at a certain level in a hierarchy, but in the eyes of the people that you're leading, I doubt that they would put you up there. And that's the result of good leadership, is that regardless of your title, regardless of where you land on paper on that hierarchy, where would the people that you're leading put you? And I think if we can, and for those of you out there listening and thinking about this stuff, if you can change that mindset, or maybe you already have that mindset and you're trying to figure out, but now what? And I know we're going to talk way more about some of the tricks and tools that both you and I have used in our experience. But just focus on that mindset shift first. That's number one. And that goes to stuff. I mean, guys, I just want to listen to you evangelize a little bit on culture, man. Like you and I love talking about this, and I love when I meet other people that understand that this is they say, the way I look at it is like the waves, that's your everyday kind of grinding stuff. The waves of the ocean, that's the grinding stuff. You really want to make change, you got to change the current. And the current is culture. You want to really make moves in your team, your company, you got to change that current. We got to change culture. Am I right or am I right?
Dude. 100%.
I know you're big.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to culture, I'm all about it.
Yep.
And the thing that I really like about culture, and kind of tying it into directly what you're talking about, is when it comes to like a society, when you look at like China, India, when you look at America, our working culture, our business culture are very unique. Even like Japan, like they are very, very unique. China, their focus is on growing the country itself. Right. Like that's like everyone knows that they're together and they're focusing on building the country up. Right. And then like Russia, they, very similar to China, own most of the companies, or at least have a very vested interest in the countries, being a little bit more lenient there. Right. But here in America, I think we're actually entering a new wave of entrepreneurship. I think that we've reignited a lot of that primal, like ambitious flame that actually we dealt with, or that you saw very deeply in the Industrial Revolution and in our past. Like we have eras where there is significant change. And I think they're started by honestly conversations like these, like people listening to those that have done it, that have had those hard truths, and when you talk about social media, I know that we view it very negatively. Like, personally, my generation, however you want to view it, like when we look at influencers, it's disdain. You know, like we don't like the name.
Yeah,
we don't like what they do.
Duck lips, wearing a bikini on,
exactly.
on a fake beach or something.
Yep.
You know,
that's the mindset. Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
But that's only because that's what social media was at the time. That's what made it popular. That doesn't mean that's all it can be. You know, like you just as much, well, not just as much, but you have plenty of that noise that's out there, but you have just as much solid stuff as well. Like I really enjoy Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I love Modern Wisdom, like with Chris Williamson, like Alex Hormozy, The Game. Like there's so many other people out there that do have things to say that are valuable, and they kind of follow that, not just the entrepreneurship side, but they follow that mindset of they have a voice that's worth sharing. And you don't know if that's you until you do it. And I think leadership is that. Like it's you don't know if you can do it until you go out and try. And like you said very well earlier, it's not for everyone. Like sometimes it's best to just take a step, take a second, evaluate yourself, and then you can decide. But you're not going to know until you actually try it. But having that open mind, changing your mindset, I really, really like that. That's kind of where you're starting on this path for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I agree with you. I actually, for all the jokes I like to make, you know, social media is an easy target because there are so many of the duck-lipped idiots out there that are just, you know, thirst trap, whatever. It's an easy target. But I actually am optimistic about the future. I think what really happened to us is when social media came onto the stage, it was such a novel thing that we didn't know how to handle it as human beings. We did not know how to handle it. And I think we got a little off the rails, but I'm with you. I'm seeing some course correction, and it's like all technological advances, you know, I mean, technology advances, and usually especially if it's a big leap, we don't know how to handle it. And it can cause problems for us on a massive scale. And I do believe that that's what's happened to social media. However, I do share your optimism. You know, we're seeing more of the kind of long form, deep thinker stuff. I think there's a desire for that out there, and that is extremely encouraging. You know, one of the knocks on social media, right, is like, oh man, these kids got the attention span of a goldfish now because they're just scrolling through everything. Well, then how do you explain 4-hour-long Joe Rogan podcast? Okay, how do you explain that? How do you explain Lex Friedman's podcast? Some of these big guys that are doing long, meaty, deep conversations, and they're getting, you know, viewing numbers that nobody's seen in a long time. So I think that is very encouraging, and I hope to see it continue and potentially be a part of it. Seeing that desire for a little bit more depth, a little bit more thoughtfulness. I want to see that fulfilled. And I think there are people out there that are doing it. And so I am optimistic. I'm cautious, but I'm optimistic on it. I am with you on that. Doesn't mean I'm not going to keep talking crap about social media.
I definitely think that social media has its place.
Yeah.
I think that this is more like my personal philosophy, but I think that as humans, it's just history. What we do is we find something new, we take it to its extreme, and then we realize it's time to dial it back. But like we always have to push it kind of far originally, whether it's AI, whether it's social media, whether it's the internet itself, you know, like that's just technology. But look at like wars, look at, you know, like it's always a hard push in the beginning. Something instigates it, right? Like there's always that fire, and then that's what ends up really burning forward. So I think that's just humanity in a nutshell. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just a fact. And as we get more advanced, because I don't think we've really changed that much since the past, but as we get, you know, whatever, as we learn from our mistakes, hopefully, I think that we'll still have that same history of pushing really hard and then dialing it back, but we just do it faster every time, right? Like, okay, we hit really hard, like, let's take a step back, let's reframe. And I really hope that stuff like this is what does it, you know, because I do think there's a lot of really good podcasts out there. I do think there's a lot of good content in general out there. And there's good people that even when they do have like the dorky stuff or like just the jokes and stuff, like entertainment is value.
No, yeah.
So yeah, that's like I said, that's more of the philosophical side of it. But
No, man.
I just think that we're on that path, right? And then I think this is that push on leadership.
No, and I think you're right, man. I'm sitting here and I'm having a realization, a learning moment for me right here in the middle of the episode is like, we're sitting here and it's fun for me to tell stories about, companies I consulted for and bad leaders that I had to either try to help fix or, they got rid of me because they didn't like what I was saying. and now I'm looking at this situation. We're talking about social media and it's like, hey, it's easy for me to whine about it. It's easy for me to complain about it. How about I start practicing what I preach, right?
Yes.
Let's change it. Let's lead, be a part of that leadership of taking it from the mindless scrolling era of social media. And let's take it to a level of education. I was reading an article, I can't remember who put it out, but it came up on one of my like Twitter feed or whatever and linked to it. And it was about how this is before the TikTok ban thing was like really kicked off. And it was talking about the difference between TikTok in the United States and TikTok in China. And the TikTok version in China was all like educational videos and teaching them like high level math and family stuff. And then you looked at America and it was all like half naked chicks and like people doing stupid pranks, and I was like, okay, so this is proof that even that short attention span algorithm based, social media, it can still be educational. It can still be a positive influence if it's used properly. So I think that, man, I got to take a little bit of my own medicine here, right? I got to look at something like this that I don't like social media, man. We've talked about it. I'm not good at it. I don't get it. I don't care what you had for dinner and I don't need to see a picture of it. Like, okay, yeah, I guess your cat's kind of cute, but like, why so many cat pictures? That's just me. I don't get it. I know some people do.
I love it because that's such an old man mindset. Dude, and I just love it. Like that's the ancient man mindset.
Well, you gotta remember, I always tell people, they're like, why do you talk like you're 70 years old? I'm like, dude, okay, you do the amount of time in the Marine Corps and then on a SWAT team that I did, your body ages like 10 times faster. And I'm now convinced that my like personality does too. But again, I have to kind of, take a dose of my own medicine here and practice what I preach. Right. I mean, and this is an opportunity. If I see an issue with something, I don't like it, I'll sit here and tell you, I think social media right now, even still, although I think it's getting better, is a net negative on human interaction, right? So far it has been, but kind of like you said, yeah, that's because we take everything to the extreme. Now we have an opportunity to lead, every single one of us, me, you, people listening in your lives, when you're dealing with your kids, whatever. Social media is not going anywhere. So now we have an opportunity to lead and get this thing back on track and turn it back into a net positive.
Absolutely.
And so, I got to take a little bit of my own medicine.
Yeah. I'll throw one super quick tip out, by the way, when it comes to social media. One way to control it, this is that self responsibility is really big on this tip. You can control your own algorithm. So when it comes to TikTok, Instagram, whatever X, whatever is out there, whatever you spend time on, everything has to do with time. Whatever you spend time on, that is what your algorithm is going to show. Yeah. The likes don't matter. Who you subscribe to doesn't matter. Like now it's fully based off of time. So if you pay attention to stupid stuff, like you're literally wasting your own time. There's zero benefit. There's nothing you're getting out of it. If you're going to do it anyways, tailor it yourself. Skip it. Right. Yeah. Skip it until you find something semi-educational or something that you actually want to focus on. It doesn't have to be business, doesn't have to be philosophy, doesn't have to be engineering, math, but something you find interesting. Maybe it's art or some specific form of entertainment, but tailor it yourself. Don't let it control you. So what I do, I'll give you just my personal tip, is my feed is only stand-up comedy. It is philosophy. It is science and math, and then business. Like that's it. And the way that I control that is I genuinely just skip anything that's not one of those categories. That's it. I'll get thrown stupid AI chats or that stupid like half on, half off thing, but just skip it. Like you have the control. Like that's a thing that people don't understand. So that's my little tip as far as social media. Don't let it control you. You control it. So
No, I think that's good, man. You gotta keep spreading that around because, and I think I'm like a lot of people. I know what social media is, but I don't really understand like the algorithms behind it and how it really works, and part of that is I'm a knuckle dragon Marine. The other part of that is that I'm right on the edge of that generation. I mean, I was still doing like MySpace in high school, you know what I'm talking about? So I mean, I'm right on that edge, man,
Same, big dog.
And so I think that, you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, again, it's a tool. How you use it is going to determine how it works for you. Now you're always going to get, it's like email, right? Like email is a tool. That doesn't mean I click on every spam email that I get from all these like random people trying to sell me something.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Take control of something, and you use the word, you used responsibility, but I almost think it's more accountability. I can sit there, scroll through my stupid social media and then be like, oh, this is dumb. It only shows me dumb stuff. Well, who's accountable for that? And you just called it out, right? Like, dude, you're accountable for that. It's showing you dumb stuff because when you are on there, you're looking at dumb stuff. And so you got to have that discipline and that accountability to say, hey, if I want to use this in a positive way, then I need to use it in a positive way. Like, let me be in control. Don't, kind of bend over and say, well, nothing I can do. This is just the magical algorithm that gives me dumb stuff all the time. Yeah, man, there's a lot of wisdom in that. And it really does tie into everything we've been talking about because, you mentioned that one of the issues that you're seeing with young leaders sometimes is that kind of timid, no drive, just kind of milquetoast, and it applies to the same circumstance, right? Like, am I going to be timid and be like, oh, I don't like social media. I don't really get it. I don't have any confidence with it. Or am I going to take accountability, have a little bit of confidence and go after it and say, no, you know what? I'm going to use it in a way that actually is beneficial for me and other people. And I'm going to be deliberate about it. And I'm going to be accountable to myself. And I'm going to have discipline. And those are all the hard things to do, and that's part of, I think that's part of life. I think people aren't doing enough hard things anymore. We wake up, our phones do everything for us. We have so many comforts, and don't get me wrong, I love them. I have them too. I drive my car and it's got heated seats and it is like the best thing ever, man. I live in a cold area of Washington State, so I love my heated seats. But gosh dang, man, for most of human history, that was not even comprehensible. It's a luxury to have, and it makes my life easier.
100%. I actually really, really love this topic.
Yeah.
When it comes to the comfort side, I view comfort and complacency like they're right there. Like comfort is just the first level. But as soon as you're comfortable and then you don't change it, like you don't get uncomfortable at any side,
right,
then you get complacent. And that's where you get the just giant fat fucks that just stay the same forever. Yep. That's where you get the people that, and that's saying like, that's coming from a fat ass. You know what I'm saying? Like
I know, I've been there.
Yes. Like that's where it comes from. Like the people that are comfortable with their current worldview. So they never learn more. It's the people that view that they, it's the ones that think that they peak in high school or peak in middle school. And I'm like, you have an entire life. Like, but it's in my opinion, that's where it goes. And at the end of the day, people are cruising through their life and they're not driving it. And I swear to like, that is the thing that right now in my life is like almost my priority is like, I viewed that since I had my daughter, basically for me personally, from pretty much when I was like born to not giving a fuck through elementary school, middle school, high school, almost failing high school because I sucked that hard. And then going right into the military, but as a reservist because the recruiter got me and said, hey, you can just change super easily after you get in there and switch to active.
Just click a button. It's easy.
And I was like, awesome. But then going to like boot camp, which was cake for me, but then going to A school where I actually had to learn and then failing as a corpsman 3 times in A school because I just did not give a fuck. Like I was so lazy and just cruising through life, even through the military. And for me personally, not until I had my first daughter, like I was 19 years old when I got my girlfriend at the time pregnant, who's now my wife, by the way. But that's the thing that for me, the first time that I was like, oh, like oh shit,
It clicked.
like
It clicked.
no one's coming to save me. Like
Yeah.
nothing else is coming. Like I am now just not responsible for my life, but I'm responsible for another human being.
Right.
That's a lot. And for me, that was the wake up call that I needed. And I can be totally transparent about that now. It took
Right.
me a long time to like really self evaluate myself and
Right.
realize that, yeah, you were just a piece of shit for 19 years.
Right.
And then not until 20, where you like, oh, I guess I better turn this thing on and then
Yeah.
really start driving my life. Like that was the switch though. And so everyone has a different switch.
Yeah.
You know, it just depends on whatever it is that you find important. I think that for a lot of men right now, it's that viewpoint that no one's coming to save you.
Right.
Like, this is it. Like, you're on you. And in my opinion, when it comes to entrepreneurship, like, that's the number one time that you see it, like, very black and white. Because
Right.
if you're a solo entrepreneur, like, it's all on you. Like, no
you.
work is going to get done. You know?
can't blame anybody, man. Can't blame anybody.
Exactly. Yeah. Like,
Oh,
you
my
can't
boss
pay
is an
someone.
asshole. Like, dude, you are your own
Absolutely.
boss. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, oh man, no one's getting any work done. It's all on you.
You're the only guy in the company. If no one's getting work done, I think it's on you, bud. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a lesson I learned too, getting into entrepreneurship. You know, I mean, I've been working for the government for most of my life. You know, I had a little spat before I got into law enforcement in the business world, but most of my life I was a government worker, man. I get a paycheck at the same time, same day every month, you know, and it's guaranteed. I know exactly how much it's going to be, and it's just like easy. My healthcare is paid for. This, you know, everything's good. And then you get into entrepreneurship, and you're like, oh, this is all on me. And if it doesn't work, I'm going hungry. You know, if it doesn't work, it's going to really not work. And I think that obviously, and you know, your examples, I don't have any kids right now. That's why my joke is that, okay, I don't have kids. I think it's an important step for you, right? That's what kind of clicked for you. Me, I'm just going to cold plunge in the morning. That's my replacement for it. I'm just going to do something that sucks, dude. You know,
It's a more cost-effective replacement to having a kid.
Yeah, well, yeah. But and you know what? There's all these stuff like, oh, is cold plunge good for this for your body? Is good for this? And I would read up on it, and I'm like, you know what? I don't even care about the science behind it, because all I know is that it sucks. And when I start my day, when I start every day in the morning with something that sucks, but I make myself do it, it sets that mindset, right? And I think on a much different level, having children, I imagine, again, I don't have kids, but I imagine that it's like you said, nobody's coming. You got to do it. You got your baby's crying in the middle of the night. You got to do it.
It's the ultimate, your feelings don't matter. Like, that's what cold plunge is. Like, the benefit of those things is that you tell your brain to shut the fuck up, and then you just do it. Like, that's what it is. So yeah, I don't cold plunge. But I run, like, I actually, right before this podcast, I did like a 1.5 mile run, which for me was pretty tough. But
well, that's the key. It's just got to be hard. I don't care what it is. You know, I've known some people that have got some, you know, obviously very hard medical things going on. They're like, oh, that's cool, dude. Yeah, I don't want to get in shape. Or I'd like to get in shape, but I can't do this. Then I go, well, what would be hard for you, but doable? Well, if I would walk the flight of stairs in my house 10 times or more, that'd be pretty hard, but I could do it. Well, then do that. It doesn't, you know, you got to tailor it to yourself, and everything's that way. Leadership is that way. The way I may lead a team is going to be different than the way you lead a team, because we have different experiences. We have different personalities. We have different ways that we interact with people. And that's the key. And as we go through these conversations, you know, anybody listening to this, you gotta listen to it with the understanding that everything I'll try to talk about, and I know you're the same way because we've had these conversations. There is no magic pill. There is no, if you do this, if you follow this checklist, you will be a good leader. You know, there is no, all you got to do is follow my methods. No, I'm telling you, there is no magic pill. You got to figure out your own style, you know, and that's why a lot of the trainings I do and talks that I have, it's like, I just talk with people and they have the answer. They know how to lead their way. You got to just kind of drag it out of them. And I think one of the best tools to drag that out of you is something like you said, when it clicked for you, having a kid, because you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. This is happening. you now are responsible for this human life, and you gotta make it. You gotta come correct, right? And so I almost wonder, and this is kind of like going on a tangent here, but I am wont to do that at times. There's no denying statistically birth rates are down. People, if they're having children, they're having them later in life. Hey, I'm one of them. I'm 35, no kids. I do want kids, but we'll see what happens, right? Do you think that maybe the fact that number, and I think there's pros and cons, and I'm not going to get into what's better or worse, whatever. I think everybody's different. But do you think that maybe the fact that society as a whole is kind of going that direction to we're having less kids, if we are even having kids, and if we are even having kids, we're having them later? I almost wonder if that's somehow tied into some of these issues we're talking about, because if you don't, that's kind of like one of those universal hard things to do. That, like, it doesn't matter your socioeconomic background, what country you're from, what you're doing for work. Having a kid is pretty universal to the human condition, obviously with exceptions, some on their own decisions and some, tragic, medical issues or whatever. But it's generally, human beings have children. We procreate. We're like every other animal. We procreate, right? And I almost wonder if the fact that we're in a time where we're getting away from that, maybe what people, I'm not going telling everyone, hey, go out and have a kid today because it's going to make you a better leader. Like, that is not what I'm saying. That is not at all what I'm saying. But I just wonder if that's part of that social condition we're seeing. I don't know. What do you think?
I really like the question. I think that it's really interesting. I think that you are right. I think that you're right. I think that one big part is people aren't growing up fast anymore.
Yeah.
Our leaders, the old white guys that created America, like, dead ass. Like, for some reason, people think that's a bad thing. Like, that's who they were.
Right.
Sure, they were immigrants, and hey, kudos to them too. But like, that's the core leadership group. They made America now in 2025 so comfortable that Darwin's law doesn't work anymore. Like, and this is genuine, like, a belief of mine as far as the philosophy side of it is we've created an environment that's so comfortable that you don't have to grow up. It's never been easier to live. Like, never. Even our homeless people live off of scraps. Like, it's that easy that even if you're losing, you're still surviving. Right. And then you have people who their parents are paying for them. And that's just super comfortable. Yeah. And as we've talked about, when it comes to leadership, being a parent is a leader, and we're not instilling the same level of, I'll just say, like, violence into our kids that honestly we should. And when I say violence, I want to be very, very clear. I'm not talking about like legitimate violence. I'm talking about like the desire for growth, like that carnal push that like we should have. People aren't getting that anymore. And I think that it starts from their parents. Their parents are like, oh, life's easy, go to college, everything's panned out. Right. And that was the generation before us, which then messed us up because we had a false set of expectations. And I'm going to be totally honest, as someone who went through that, get the fuck over it. Like, no one cares. Like, you spent however much money on, and now you're in debt because of your specific degree and whatever, like, no one cares. Right. At the end of the day, people don't realize that it's easier than ever to survive, which makes us weak as people. Right. And then the next step to that is that you're not driving yourself for your like best self. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, people aren't pushing because they want themselves to be the best version of themselves. They're just cruising. Like, they're just enjoying life, and life's coming at them versus them specifically pressing that gas and saying, I'm going to learn, I'm going to advance, I'm going to make more money. Like, whatever metric of success they're viewing, it's not enough to pull them. They have to fear failure and pull towards success at the same time. Right. And I just don't see the parents of, honestly, our generation didn't do that very well. And obviously, overgeneralization, not everyone, but that's my viewpoint on it, is you've got to have the fear of failure, but you've got to drive towards success. And if you don't have both of those, like, you could still do it for sure, but like, you know, I don't know. It's just that's my 2 cents on that.
No, I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. And I mean, like you said, we're not growing up. Here's a perfect example. You can stay on your parents' insurance till you're 26 years old.
It's crazy. Like,
are you kidding me? 26.
But the thing too is that's a social, like, us thinking that is such a social construct of America. Like in India, you, like, that's the move. Like, you live with your parents forever, and then you get like it just grows from there. Like, Mexican culture is very similar. Spaniards in general, like, you grow like that South American family. Yeah, but there ain't no American people still living with their parents, helping with the chores, taking care of things. No, they want their own place. They want all this freedom. They want, but then they're like, "Oh, but Daddy, can you pay the bills, please?" You know, it's like America was built on independence, big dog. But independence is hard.
Exactly. No, and it goes the same stuff we're talking about with leadership. They want all the glory of being independent without any of the responsibility. Being independent, especially when you're young. I mean, don't be wrong. I'm not saying, listen, I was 18 when I joined the Marine Corps. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. That was
dude. 17 I'm like, for the Navy. I was right there with you, big dog.
Dude. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I had to do it, and I knew that I didn't have this safety net that I could just be like, I don't want to do this anymore or whatever. You know, my dad always told me, and he thinks that he was being a dick now. He looks back, he's like, man, I was kind of a dick. I'm like, no, I'm glad. But he told me, he goes, hey, you turn 18, get the hell out of my house and get a job and pay for your own stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. And his rule was always, as long as you live under my roof, you live under my rules. And I know that sounds like, you know, some old school stuff, but I think it works and it applies.
I think
and you know what, dude, it motivated me because I wanted to get the hell out from underneath his roof, because I want to live by my own rules, make my own mistakes, make my own life. And what I'm seeing a lot of now is people, they want all the benefits, and sometimes they get all the benefits of independence without any of the responsibility. And then so they come across something actually difficult. I mean, we see this in the workplace all the time, right? It's like the first time they have a review and their supervisor's like, hey, you really need to work on this little thing. You're doing great, but you just got to work on this. And they just, oh my God, I'm failing miserably. What am I doing? And it's like, whoa, why are you reacting that way? But you kind of got to look back to like, okay, what's the rest of your life been like? Oh, you've never been faced with failure. And when you failed, it's always been like, oh, whatever, you're fine. We got this for you. We'll give you this. We'll hand you this. You'll have this taken care of. You got to be faced with failure sometimes, or at least the threat of failure. So yeah, man, I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. And I certainly don't have the answer for society. But I think just by identifying what the problem is, it can help us kind of grow out of it. One of my favorite things on this topic is like, my dad's got this buddy, right? And he loves to talk crap about the millennial generation. And I'm a millennial. I know I am. And I know all the stuff that goes with it. Now, I like to say I'm part of that 1% of millennials that was, you know, fighting in Afghanistan for 20 years. So I feel like I get a little bit, I'm a different thing, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm still a millennial, and this guy just loves to talk crap about it and whatever. And I think I kind of shut him up once, and I was like, well, your generation raised us. Like, you complain about everything we're doing. I'm like, bro, you guys raised us, you know? And now you get that nature versus nurture argument. And I think there's a lot of good arguments both sides. But at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is like, hey, they say, well, you're the participation trophy era. And I'm like, yeah, because you guys gave everyone participation trophies. Like, I didn't give nobody a participation trophy.
For sure.
He did not like that, but I mean, there's a lot of truth there, I think. And I think that, like you said, the optimism I have is I think people are realizing like, oh yeah, I got to start doing some hard stuff. I got to start challenging myself. I got to start trying to grow. And I think I'm hopeful and optimistic that we're going to swing back.
I think we're already doing it, man.
I think we are.
I think we're already doing it.
Well, man, I tell you, a lot of these, Gen Z gets a lot of crap too, and I've interacted with some very, young professionals getting into the business world, and I'm like, whew, I would put you in charge of those 38-year-olds that are over there, because they got this. I need everything handed to me. I'm entitled mindset, and I'm seeing a swing in some of this younger generation where they're like, no, I'm here to work. I'm here to excel. I'm here to grind. Now they use really stupid verbiage that I don't understand.
Yes.
But whatever,
Yes.
whatever. I don't understand a lot of this lingo, but they have the right mindset, and again, so
Dude,
I'm optimistic.
I was born in 95. So yeah, man, I'm 29. I am part of that crew, which is crazy.
Bro, wow.
I just missed the millennial mark.
Just barely.
Yep. But I'm the spearhead of that of that
Yeah,
group.
no, and it's a real thing, man. I'm telling you. And now this is anecdotal. I don't have any like data or anything on it, but just from interactions I've had, I think that there's a realization that we've gotten soft, really soft. And I'm optimistic. I think it's swinging back. I want to see it swing back a little faster. But we're definitely having a course correction, and I think it comes down to little things. And we were having a conversation about having kids, and I meant it when I said I'm not telling you have to have a kid to learn these lessons. I don't have a kid, right? So if I said that, I'd be really talking crap to myself. But I think it used to be the vehicle for a lot of these life lessons in humanity. And we're not here to debate whether that vehicle changing is a good or bad thing. I don't think I'm smart enough to really know that answer. But at the end of the day, I do know that doing something hard in your life and challenging is important, whether that's having a kid, whether that's focusing on your career through your 20s and 30s, whether that's cold plunging in the morning, whether it's joining the military, whether it's just doing your job and becoming the absolute best at it you can be. Whether it's picking up an instrument and learning, man, I've been trying to learn the violin. I always want to learn the violin. Yeah, man. I always want to learn the violin. And, I play a little bit of music here and I'm certainly not a great musician by any means, but I just always thought it'd be cool to learn.
I remember you were great on the guitar, man.
Bro,
you were that dude that brought me on deployment. And I was like,
don't even talk about that. We're going to cut this. Hey, we're going to cut this part. People are gonna picture me with like long hair and like try to impress girls or something.
What
like
about Nom, man?
Oh, jeez, man. Hey, I got another Jason Mraz song you want to hear, bro? Come on. No, but man, violin is hard. There's a reason that the only people that are good at it started playing when they were like 8 months old. Yeah,
I played when I was young. Not that young, but I played when I was younger. My mom made me do it, and I was terrible. I was terrible. And the funniest thing is she was like, okay. And I honestly, it's such an impressive thing for her to do. I was so bad, she still made me go to like concerts in front of other people and play. Crazy.
I ain't doing that.
Terrible. And I was just like, now as an adult, I'm like, that's a savage move, but I'm about it.
Yeah, well, it's doing something hard. And again, I'm telling you folks, like, and I'm sure there's probably some great violin players that are listening, but it is not an easy instrument. You are just barely off and it sounds like nails on a chalkboard. And then you just barely turn it back and like, oh, that's actually very beautiful. And then it's crap again, I mean, it's a difficult thing to learn. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't say after a while going like, you know what, screw this. I'm never going to be a violin player. I'm too big to be a violin player. And it looks kind of weird when I'm doing this, So I'm like, I'm not going to do it. And I kind of had to check myself and be like, no, this is hard. It's challenging my mind. It's challenging my mechanics with my hands. It's like, and it's challenging my soul because my soul likes to be good at things. And I want to be impressive. But am I willing to put in the hard work and listen, I'm probably never going to be good, but if I can get to a point where I can play, Mary Had a Little Lamb or something, at least that's something, you know what I'm saying? And the real value isn't in becoming, a famous violin player or something. That's not the value in this. The real value isn't in impressing people with a skill. The value to me in something like that is it's hard. It's hard to do. It's frustrating. It's challenging to my mind. It's challenging to my body and my attitude and my emotions. That's why it's valuable. And I think regardless of what works for you in your life, you have to find something that is challenging. I think, we've got a big problem with mental health in this country right now. I mean, I would call it a crisis, a real crisis of mental health. And there's a lot of factors. But I think one of those factors, especially when it comes to like things like depression, I believe, and this isn't even just my opinion, just even based on research, one of the big factors is lack of purpose. People are lacking a purpose. And one of the best ways to find a purpose is go do something hard. Go do something challenging. And that doesn't mean that ends up being your whole life, but you get so much clarity when you're doing something hard. And I'm sure, and I'll have you talk about this here in a minute, but like for me, my hard thing that we talked about, my cold plunging, you're raising a kid. Touche, you win, yours is harder. But I'll just use my example. I have a lot of clarity when I do it. I get in there and I go, oh shit, and I get that like tense, like, oh, I'm breathing. And then I have a lot of moments of clarity where things that maybe frustrated me from the day before kind of start to make sense for some reason in my mind. Or, maybe I have an attitude that's not quite right and not helping me continue down my path of success. And in that moment of freezing my ass off and a lot of swear words, there kind of comes some clarity from that. And I know from talking to people who are raising kids that as much as you're raising them and teaching them things, you learn and you grow. And I'm sure we could sit and spend a lifetime just talking about that. But there's no denying that the reason you get that growth, the reason you get that clarity is because it's hard. If it was easy, I get no clarity from eating Doritos. Super easy. I like Doritos. I just open the bag, stick my hand in, shove my mouth full of Doritos, right? I get no clarity during I'm not sitting there going, oh man, my attitude is not quite right. I think I can do this differently. Crunch, crunch. No, I get clarity when I'm doing something difficult. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you have the same kind of mindset and experience when it comes to raising a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to doing something difficult, it's almost like first off, it's an impossible task to do right.
Right.
Like that's the thing, that it's never going to be right because you only learn the lessons after you do it.
Right.
Like that's why hindsight is 20/20, right? Like genuinely. And as a parent, it's so tough because for me, I'll give you like a genuine fear of mine is that I make one mistake that's so bad that like that defines, like she chooses that moment to define her future.
Yeah, like 20 years down the road, she's on the therapist couch going, one day my dad did this.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like that's a genuine fear of mine. Like I'm not perfect. I do consider myself a very good dad. Like I am the breadwinner. I make the money. I make sure that I have time to spend with them. When I'm with them, I really try to be focused on the time I spend with them. Present. Like, yeah, like these are all things that I strive to do. And that's why, and after doing it for 8 years now, like I can say that I think that I'm a decent enough dad.
Right.
But it just takes one moment. Like it just takes, and then honestly, it's the same thing when it comes to leadership of like a team. Like right now I'm an HR director of an organization called Community Link that's actually a nonprofit for the mentally disabled. So like quick shout out there.
It all connects, people. It all connects.
But I have a team right now of 2 employees, and honestly, my training or my leadership style was developed previous to them, right? Like I didn't just wake up one day and I'm like, I'm the HR director, I have to act this way. Like, no, like I've been a supervisor with UPS. I worked as a senior admin for Maximus. I was a hospital corpsman second class with the Navy. Like I've gone through all these different steps, and now I've reached a point where like, I know how I'm going to interact with my people, but it just takes one bad time. Like that's the really, really tough part that I have the biggest fear of when it comes to raising my kids is that, I can't control my daughter's life outside of house. I can't control her actions. Like, I accept those as facts of life. Like, I cannot control her. I can just show her the path. And leadership is the exact same thing, and it's just as terrifying. Like, and that's what it is. It's an impossible task that you just have to try, and trying is winning, and that's it.
Yeah. No, and you're right. I like that phrase, impossible task. I've never used that before, but I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that, because it kind of points out like, hey, here's one thing you can't be as a leader, a perfectionist. You can't. I've known people that they are just perfectionists. I'm like, bro, go be an engineer, because that's where I need that. Okay. But in leadership roles, you can't be a perfectionist, because not only because your people are going to make mistakes and you're going to have to coach them and let them make mistakes. You can't hold their hand through everything, but also you're going to make mistakes. And if you have that kind of perfectionist mindset, you're going to beat yourself up too much. And then you're going to perform worse. You're going to be a worse leader, and then your people are going to suffer, and then your team's going to suffer as a whole. I think that kind of framing it in that way of, hey, this is an impossible task. It's impossible to be perfect. Vince Lombardi quote that I love. Vince Lombardi coached the Green Bay Packers, and they won the first ever Super Bowl. Which, are we allowed to say Super Bowl? I know they got all those like weird legal terms. The big game, the final game of the NFL. Okay, this is not. I am not using any copyrighted trademark things. The final game of the NFL season.
We're leaving it in.
Now come get me, NFL. You're not going to get much out of this one.
Exactly.
Good luck. Here's $20.
I hope you're ready for a fat zero.
Yeah. But he obviously is an amazing coach, storied experience and sort of a legend in the football world. And he told his players, he said, greatness lies upon the road to perfection. And it's there's so much depth to that quote that maybe he didn't even realize it at the time. But the fact that he said the road to perfection, he never said we're going to get to perfection. He never said we have to get to perfection. He said we will become great because we are still not perfect, but we're striving for perfection. And that is a hard mindset to hone, because sometimes you tell people that quote, and I'm careful with who I say that quote to, because some people are like, I need to be perfect and I need to be perfect. And they're like, no, that's not the point of this. The point is saying it's good to strive for something that is an impossible task, because while you're striving for that, you're going to get to greatness. And so I've always loved that quote, man. It's always stuck with me, even from when I was a kid, growing up playing football and having coaches teach me that stuff. I think you're absolutely right. You have to accept it's an impossible task, but that doesn't mean that you surrender. And that's again, another great thing that, both you and I know we picked up from, at least I picked it up from the military. You would be given these impossible tasks. One of the things that I don't know, I'm not sure they still do this or not, but in a lot of the initial induct or training for, some of these specialized infantry units or, special operations units, involves a lot of pool work. Pool work is essentially, in layman's terms, getting your ass beat underwater. Just constantly swimming long distances, treading water for ridiculous amounts of time, getting what's called sharked, where they just drag you to the bottom of the deep end and try to drown you. And it wasn't so much that they're training you for the skill of surviving being drowned by a crazy guy who's your instructor. What they're training you for is the mental skill of recognizing that you're faced with an impossible task. When the instructor drags me to the bottom of the pool and I have no air left, I'm going to gulp some water. I'm going to borderline drown, maybe have a shallow water blackout. But when they bring me to on the side of the pool and they ask me, do you quit? What am I going to say? Well, a leader, someone who has that mindset, they're going to say, throw me back in. And they're going to get back in that water, and they're going to be a little bit better this time, a little bit smarter about when they time their breath, so that instructor may hold them down there, but they can hold on and not black out. That's the whole thing. They push you to your breaking point, and everybody's breaking point is different. There's a kind of interesting phenomenon, especially in these specialized units, especially in the special operations world, where it's the guys who are the best and the guys who really succeed and go on and become something, or even just pass the basic training stuff, are not your Hollywood examples of them. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not looking like these jacked, just super athletic, good. I mean, look at me. You know, it's like good looking. You know, just right. I'm a player, right? That's not me. You know, and that's not the people that pass. That's not the people that excelled, because physical strength is not the most important thing when it comes to that type of work. You know, those type of abilities, there's an aspect that's important, but what's more important is the mind, is the mindset, the mental side, right? So there'd be some things where, like me, you know, I was not the best ruck runner in the teams by any means. Well, they would intentionally break up our ruck run groups in a way to push you constantly. And so maybe there was a group of 10 guys that were better than me at ruck running, but inside of their group, 9 of them were worse than 1, and they were struggling to keep up, and they were being pushed to their absolute max. And I was going through the same thing, but at a slower pace, because all 10 people in my group were worse than the 10 people in this group, but we're all getting just pushed to our limit. And that's the real goal of that stuff, is they want to see, what do you do when you reach failure? Do you continue to push? Or do you say, this is too hard, or I can't get this right, or I give up? And that's, you know, some people, when I go into some of my training and talk about some of these stories, they go, okay, hey, that's great, Joe. Cool. If I ever need to be really good at being drowned, or if I ever need to run a mission where I'm jumping out of a plane at 30,000 feet and doing a small scale raid for a high value target, then yeah, I'll listen to you talk and I'll take some of your advice. But I am the HR manager at a small business. Okay. I am not doing that. I live off of Red Bull and Slim Jims, and I just do a little bit of paperwork every day. And I understand why people think that, but let me tell you, the same stuff applies. And there's no reason that the guy that's living off of Slim Jims and Red Bull and just doing his HR job at a small business can't have that same exact mindset. I'm not saying you got to go get a membership at a gym that has a pool and start drowning yourself there. Like, don't do that. Okay. That's not the solution here. What I'm saying is that take the lessons from things that guys like you have done, and understand the value in that lesson, translate it to what you do, and also understand it is important. I told this story last time you and I talked, and I'm going to tell it again because I want to make sure it's part of anyone who's listening to Mission Critical specifically. I want them to understand the story, because it's really at the heart of why I like to do this, and I like to talk about these things. So in Afghanistan, I believe this is 2010, and we were operating out of a patrol base, small little patrol base, just guys from my battalion, and then obviously some additional personnel that helped us get stuff done. You got engineers that are putting up the HESCO barriers. We've got medical staff there, FET teams. I don't know if they're still using FET teams, but the female engagement teams. They had their own little section, whatever, and people that worked on the trucks, your motor T folks, a little bit of everything there on this little patrol base. And I run into this guy when I'm grabbing a dirty MRE that had been dropped by a helicopter, and maybe a couple rippets. If those of you who served in the Middle East or during those time periods, you know what rippets are, little horrible energy drinks. And I meet one of these Marines, and I can tell, he's not a combat guy. He's clearly a logistical guy or whatever. He's got a clean uniform, and I just start talking to him. Hey, man, what's up? I'm Joe, whatever. He tells me his name, and I said, cool. Who are you with? You with Motor T? Did you guys come in with this admin group or whatever? And he's just like, oh, I'm a water dog. Water dog? What the hell's a water dog? Well, for those of you who don't know, Marines have the nickname Devil Dogs, and so he had kind of he had kind of done a little play of words on this, and so I'm like, okay, what's a water dog? And he goes, well, I work with water. I make sure you guys have water. Okay, so he kind of I'm curious, so he starts going into more detail. And this guy, from start to finish, his job was to ensure logistically that we would have good, clean, potable water before every mission, stocked up. There wasn't ever going to be an issue. And if we didn't have water, we had the tools to make the dirty water in Helmand Valley potable for us. And so that was his whole job. And he presented it to me initially as like, oh, I'm just a water dog. And I'm just we got this term in the Marine Corps specifically, and I know other branches use too, pogue. Maybe you've heard it. There's a lot of different opinions on it, but essentially it means person other than grunt. It means you're not an infantry guy, right? You're not sending rounds down range and having rounds sent at you. And I hate that. I hate that whole culture. That's one thing I did not like about the Marine Corps. I think most good people in the Marine Corps realize that it's more of just a fun joke, and they use it that way. But there were some people that would actually hold on to that. Well, you're just a pogue. Well, this guy kind of had that mindset, I think, drilled into him. I'm just a pogue. I'm just an admin type of role, right? And I told him, I'm like, I'm going to tell you right now, brother, I got a mission tomorrow, and we're leaving tomorrow. It's going to last a while. Look up at the sun. I go, it's 122 damn degrees out here. Said, you are the only thing that's going to keep me alive. Without you, there is no way in hell that I could survive out there. And so you may think you're just this, I'm just a water dog, but my life is depending on you doing a good job. So I was like, so I wanted to instill in him in that moment, like, dude, have some pride in what you do. Martin Luther King, we just got past MLK Day, right? And one of his big speeches that he gave, and I don't remember all the quotes from the speech, but some of the general message he's getting across in one of these sections of a speech is God bless you.
Thank you.
Is it's the street sweeper speech that he gives, and he talks about, if you're going to be a street sweeper, be the best damn street sweeper you can be. Now he's using that job as an example of kind of what would have been considered at the time like a lowly job. Oh, he's just a street sweeper. He doesn't really have any skills. He's not really. And what I believe Martin Luther King was talking about there is like, take pride in what you are and what you do, and good things will come from that. People will notice. I think back to my law enforcement career, there was a gas station I used to love. I worked nights for quite a while, and I used to love going to this gas station because I needed some coffee in the middle of the night. And there was always this guy out front just sweeping the lot. And he clearly looked like, he probably had some drug use in his history, and he had lived a rough life, And one day I asked the clerk that I was pretty friendly with, I'm like, hey, what's with this guy always out there sweeping? And he tells me the story. He says, well, one day he just showed up and started sweeping. And they went out and asked her, like, hey, dude, what do you, like, thanks, but like, what are you doing? And he goes, well, I don't have a job. I can't get a job. I got too many felony convictions. He straight tells him, I struggle with drug addiction. He goes, but, I want to do something. I can't just sit at my house all day because I know I'm just going to use dope and I'm going to make bad decisions. And he said, last time I came in here, and he said, I noticed there was a bunch of trash, so I'm just going to sweep it. And I want to just clean it up. And he wasn't, he wasn't belligerent or anything. He was just really honest with him. And the guy's like, well, if you want to sweep it, go ahead. Long story short, fast forward, this guy keeps coming back. He keeps doing that. He's not getting paid. He's just doing it. And his whole mindset is, I need to do something to keep me out of trouble, essentially. He's now paid full time to do that. He just sweeps at multiple gas stations. And that's because they look and they're like, well, hey, this guy's showing up more regular than some of my employees.
Yeah, for real.
And he's doing a good job. The lot's really clean, which is super helpful. They start paying him a little bit. And they're like, hey, could you do this at our other location? And like I said, it just grew from there. And he built something. Now, I'm not saying that guy now is a millionaire and has a giant house on the hill, but he did something impactful. And he made something of himself. And it goes back to that same mindset that Martin Luther King and hopefully that water dog that I told the story about understand, is that whatever you're doing, it's all part of the bigger picture. And there is a lot of value in it. So when guys like you come in and start talking about these big ideas about leadership and society, and we start using examples from our history that sound maybe a little bit extreme for the average person, I want them to understand, and I hope they understand, what you're doing is important. For example, if you manage a team, if you fail at it in a business, no matter what the industry, what's going to happen? Well, there's a lot of things that could happen. You could lose your job. They could lose their jobs. The company could go under. And at the end of the day, just by performing at your job and adding to the wealth of the business and the growth of the business, you're empowering every single member of that business to also be successful. And if you fail at your job, you're letting them all down. Your whole team, people that maybe you don't even know on the other side of the company, you're letting them down. And so what happens when you let them down? What happens when people lose their job? They got bills to pay. Are they going to lose their house? Are they going to lose their car? Are they going to be able to pay for groceries? And so, yeah, it is life or death. I don't care if you are just, say, oh, I'm just a front office admin person. Your job is still life or death, because if you fail miserably and the company fails because of your failure, and now people are losing their jobs, and the job market's not easy right now. Things aren't easy out there. And so you performing at what you may think is this menial task job, low-level job, you doing the best you possibly can at it is actually a part of a system that provides wealth and food and a car and housing for all the people that work in your company and the people that your company touches. And that's a powerful thing. And you kind of have to step outside yourself and realize that it's not just about you. It's not even just about the people you see every day. We're all part of this thing that's so much bigger. I know there's a lot of opinions out there on what some people call capitalism. I call it the free market. And I don't really care what your opinion is. I am 100% positive in this. The free market system has been, at least thus far in human history, the greatest factor when it comes to rising people out of poverty. You talked about it earlier in this conversation. Even the poor people in our country, compared to other places in the world, live like kings. I haven't seen a whole lot of poor people in the 32 different countries I've been to that have got big screen TVs, a car, a cell phone, and food paid for all the time by the government. They're not, our poor people are getting food. They're getting everything. And now I'm not saying there aren't examples, outliers, and maybe we as a society need to make sure we're getting those people more resources. Again, that's not my job, right? I'm not here to come up with policy on how to deal with the homeless situation. God bless the people that are trying and doing that. But I will say, and there's no denying it. I mean, you can look at the facts. The people that we consider poor in our country are extremely wealthy compared to a lot of really poor people in other countries. And so I attribute a lot of that to the free market. I work with a lot of small business owners, medium business owners, and corporations, but I tell you, especially those small, medium business owners are some of the most charitable human beings you'll ever meet. They give a lot of the wealth that they've created, the risk they took on to create it, they give it back to the community, and it's really cool to see. And most of them don't do it needing some plaque on a wall or some hall of a library named after them. They just do it. And the reason they can do it is because of the hard work they put in, the hard work their employees put in to build a business that was successful enough that they had the means to do these charitable things. You don't see levels of charity like that in countries that aren't practicing free market sort of styles because they don't have the means to do it. They're like, dude, I got to pay my own bills. I got to feed my own family, right? How lucky are we that we live in a country, we live in a society, we live in a system where if you work hard, if you're successful, you can therefore rise up your fellow man, rise up your fellow woman, rise up the other people around you. Now, are there people that don't do any of that at all and they are totally in it for themselves? Absolutely. There are plenty of those out there. There's plenty of that. And all I'll say about that is someday we're all judged, regardless of your religious beliefs. We're all judged in some way, right? Like whether the humans you leave behind judge your legacy, or you believe that you're judged going into heaven, whatever it may be. Yeah, go ahead and live that way. I'll say, man, the majority of people that live that way, there's not that many of them out there. I really do think we're a great country, man. We have people that grow up and have that drive, even with all the issues you and I are talking about, falling short in leadership and not doing the hard things and maybe being a little too timid. For all of our shortcomings, we really are full of a lot of great people, all across the board, and great people that are doing things, creating things, and then doing something meaningful with what they create. And that really comes back to the form of leadership, right? I mean, that's what that is. And so I know I'm getting kind of rambly on that, but I'm really passionate about it, man. And I'm just so thankful, and I feel so blessed to be for all the problems we have going on right now. And Lord knows we've got a lot of them. We really are a very fortunate people. And I think reflecting on that is a good thing to do, because then it realizes, okay, if we're with all the problems we have, we're this fortunate. Think about how much better we could be if I continue to work hard, if I continue to do the hard things, if I continue to strive. And that's another thing I find really cool about this younger generation. And when it comes to their work ethic, and we already talked about how they're kind of getting back to that, like, hey, no, I need to hustle, I need to make stuff happen. They also are a little bit more socially conscious in a way that I really think we're going to see an increase as some of these younger Gen Zers move into the period of their life where they're reaping the rewards of their efforts, and therefore probably having a little bit more wealth, a little bit. I think we're going to see an increase in charitable donations. I think we're going to see an increase in charitable foundations being founded, because I've noticed a lot of them, they kind of have that mindset. They're like, hey, I want the things I want, but beyond that, I want to do something meaningful with what I build. And I see that a lot in young entrepreneurs, and that's super encouraging, because I think that's at the heart of the American spirit. And that's at the heart of really all humankind's true purpose, right? Is to leave this world a better place. When we leave it, let's leave it a better place. And so I'm pretty encouraged by seeing that trend in some of these young entrepreneurs, especially. A little bit more socially conscious, a little bit more desire to impact the world in a positive way. Encouraging.
I love it, man. Yeah, dude. I think this is it. I think we're doing it right now. I agree what you're saying as far as this is progress. Like, we're in the midst of progress all the time. And I like the fact that I feel like we are in it. Like, we're doing it right now, mission critical. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here for the night.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just want to do a shout out. This has obviously been a really fun conversation. We've got some great stuff in the pipe. I'm going to start bringing on some guests. I've got a surgeon anesthesiologist that also served on a SWAT team and has run different groups of people, from SWAT team members to staff in their office, in their medical office. Just a super knowledgeable person. I'm looking forward to that conversation. I've got, for lack of a better term, a real estate magnate, a guy who just founded and runs a company that's the biggest real estate company in Montana. Brilliant thinker. I've had some great conversations with him about specifically leadership and some lessons he's learned along the way. We're also going to branch out to, I've got a panel of high school sports coaches that are going to come on and talk about their challenges and tactics and techniques that they use in leading the youngest generation that's going to be coming into the workforce soon. So there's going to be a lot of really cool nuggets there. And then, of course, I've got some former SWAT operators, team leaders, and special ops members, and leaders in the special ops community. And we're going to have some conversations, some of the lessons that they've learned from their experiences and their perspective is just, I'm really excited about it, man. I'm really excited. We're going to have some cool conversations here.
I love it, man. I'm so hyped for it. All right. So a lot to expect from this with Joe. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, guys. Hey, and remember, don't stay safe, stay dangerous.